Witcher 3 is a weird example of basing your game on a book, because by all accounts it shouldn't work, yet miraculously it passes with flying colours. You'd think that a sequel to 7 books and 2 games would be completely impenetrable to a new audience, yet against all odds, it's a game that's extremely inviting to newcomers, making it the most popular installment in the franchise by a gigantic margin. See, normally basing your games on another piece of material, hell, even making a sequel, can alienate a potential audience who thinks they have to experience the whole series before jumping into the new game. I guarantee you, there are people who still think you have to play the Final Fantasy games in order. And asking your audience to read a book is somehow a much bigger ask than getting them to play a game, which is weird considering that books and games are the only 2 pieces of media that require active engagement from the consumer, so you'd think they'd be a perfect match. Then again, rugby and football is basically a tactical RPG, and I couldn't care less about that. To put that statement in perspective, I'm from New Zealand. So by putting such an enormous barrier to entry in front of your game, it should usually prevent most people from playing it. Yet Witcher 3 presents its story in a simple and easy to understand fashion that can get any player invested. All you need to know is that you have to find Geralt's ward Ciri, who has magical powers, as simple to understand as possible. Yet it also represents the culmination of the entire franchise, which is a fact that will go over your head if you're a new player. I was also unaware of this fact the first time I played. In fact, for every game in this video, I played the game first and then went back to read the books. I think the key to Witcher 3's success in this area is its character introductions. The game never lingers on them or introduces them with a huge amount of grandeur to signify their importance, which can confuse and alienate a player. Each one is simply introduced as a new character in the current story that Geralt knows. Many games can fall into what I call the Star-Lord trap, where they reintroduce a character from a previous game with so much dramatic effect, and I have no idea who they are, so it comes across as a strange moment, and I feel stupid for not knowing who this is. As well as the fact that Witcher 3's opening is primarily made up of new characters, such as the Crones of Crookback Bog and the Bloody Baron. But another game that fails at bringing new players on board is Black Myth Wukong, despite the fact that the main character is an original one not from the novel. The key area where Black Myth Wukong fails is simple. Every major character is from the book, and will spend no time explaining who they are to you, despite the destined one having no clue who they are. I could chalk this up to another victim of a silent protagonist negatively affecting the story, as it robs you of the opportunity to ask questions and learn more about these characters in the game. Going back to Witcher 3, I think the dialogue choices greatly helped that game, as you could ask about previous events and receive context for the greater story without everything just being plainly recapped to you. But as the Destined One can't speak throughout Black Myth Wukong, he's meant to be an avatar for the player, but said player might have questions if they're not familiar with the plot. Now, to be fair, Journey to the West is as ubiquitous to Chinese pop culture as Star Wars is to the Western world, so it's possible that game science simply failed to consider the massive impact the game would have beyond their borders. But as it stands, the plot of Black Myth Wukong is nigh incomprehensible to anyone not familiar with the source material, though many might give it a pass for this due to the genre, as Dark Souls' plot is also indecipherable without some work on the player's part. The difference is that the context for Dark Souls can be found within the game itself, and doesn't require an external source of information, even though most players will turn to Vati Vidya instead of trying to solve the lore themselves. The final game I want to discuss is BioShock, which is the best kind of book adaptation, one that doesn't require knowledge of the source material, but is greatly enhanced by it. When I first played BioShock, I thought it was a brilliantly designed game that presented a fantasy of what it will be like when the billionaires all kill each other on their space ark. But after reading Atlas Shrugged, I realized that BioShock is an examination on human greed, and a critique of the philosophy of objectivism and the dangers of treating selfishness as a virtue. I suppose it's not fair to classify BioShock in the same category as Witcher and Wukong, due to the fact it's merely inspired by a book rather than being a sequel to it. But it doesn't change the fact that, like those other two, You can only truly understand the narrative and themes of BioShock when you've read the novel it's based on. This is the reason BioShock's inspiration of a book is superior to all others, because they complement each other rather than replace one another. The Last of Us and The Road are similar enough experiences where one could be used as a substitute, but BioShock and Atlas Shrugged create a harmony where either playing the game or reading the book after experiencing the other can only enhance your enjoyment of both pieces of media. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about why Witcher 3 has the hardest choices in gaming.